The following voicemail messages were sent between Michael and Andy over a number of days and contain spoilers.
You know who you call. Leave a message. Maybe they'll call you back. Then again, maybe they won't.
We're having ourselves quite a little game of phone tag here.
Ring, ring, ring. I usually get this guy's answering machine.
I'll call you right back.
If you're there, please pick up the phone. I really want to talk to you.
I check my fucking messages every day when I come home from work. My answering machine, zero. I got a blinking light.
All I have to do is pick up this phone right here, inform the cinema, and your plan's kaput.
No, I ain't got no phone. I had to pull, because people calling all the time, and who needs the aggravation, right? Interruptions.
Hey man, just getting back to you about The Company Man, the movie I watched last night, and by all accounts you've watched it now as well. Be interested to hear what you think about it. I guess the first thing to say is that it's directed by Jason Wells, who's, I guess you could call, the low-key king of network TV. He's either created a lot of shows such as Third Watch and, well, actually looking at it, a Shameless is another one that he did, but he's had a hand in things like Eeyore, The West Wing, and a bunch of other shit. I actually really liked Third Watch back in the day, and never really could handle Eeyore because I'm a bit of a hypochondriac, and never really saw The West Wing because I find shows about politics particularly hard to stomach. I'm very disinterested in it. Me and you had her once every 6 years talk about politics the other day, and that was enough. So I'm never going to watch The West Wing. So yeah, The Company Man, it's very, and I don't necessarily mean this as a slight, because for the genre, which is essentially an indie movie with very accomplished actors, it's very televisual in many ways, but it doesn't need to be cinematic at the same time as well, because of the subject matter and the fact that it's a very quiet character study of a movie, I guess it would be fair to say. I think it was made in 2010, and from memory that comes off of the 2008 recession, I think, the worldwide recession. I remember I left Ireland in 2008, and I remember I was working in Pennies at the time, or Primark as it's now called here, and this woman came in that I worked with, and she was like, a recession's just started. Do you know we're in a recession now? And I thought, oh, okay, does that mean I don't buy my Subway lunch? And yeah, this kind of movie opens with George Bush and just a few snippets of an economic backstory of through the news that just sets the scene that a hell of a lot of people are going to lose their jobs. And when I saw the title, The Company Man, and great cast, Tommy Lee Jones, Ben Affleck, who I'll get to in it's a lengthy discussion how he is in this movie, but very, very solid people like Tommy Lee Jones and Kevin Costner and Chris Cooper, who are all very good actors, and very reliable people like Mario Bello, Rosemary DeWitt, and Craig T. Nelson. So it's filled with very, very reliable actors. But going into this, I was thinking, okay, we're gonna get a really grassroots kitchen sink version of what it looks like to see warehouse people and factory floor factory floor managers, just very low rung members of the job market looking for jobs. And I'm thinking, this is going to be interesting. Very interesting look at things. I'm always up for that. I'm always up for the Ken Loach kind of kitchen sink, Daniel Blake, or movies like, is it called A Beautiful Life or A Better Life, with that Mexican gardener character. I think it was directed by, I think it was somebody involved in Twilight, but I might be wrong about that. I think his name is Christopher something. But yeah, I'm always up for stories like that. And we don't get that. We get millionaires, multi-millionaires, and long-time high-up people's jobs. We're following what happens to basically very elite people when they lose their job. And that initially, for me, was a problem in terms of sympathy. Now, that's the me problem. As you know, we're both very working class people, and we've had this conversation before where it takes a little while for me, and probably you from all accounts, maybe not in this movie, but it takes a little while to get on board with being sympathetic towards very affluent and rich characters struggling at the level they struggle at, I guess. So to begin with, when Ben Affleck loses his job and he has to take back his Porsche and he has to cut down going to the golf club, I'm like, who gives a fuck, buddy? Who gives a fuck about that? And again, that's my bias, because you need to watch a movie on its own terms and not let your own shit influence how you feel about what the movie's trying to show. So once I got past that and started concentrating on the characters, I found it a lot more interesting to follow. And the fact that it was these rich people getting the kitchen sink treatment, I went with it, and I found it quite unique compared to what we normally get at the low end of these job market and poverty movies. It was interesting to see, and I've got a bit of this myself. I'm not saying I'm rich by any means, because I'm absolutely not, and we've had many financial conversations, but I've never had so much money in my life, but I've never had such little money as well. Because when you do good in your job, you want a nicer place. When you've got a family, you want nicer things. And there's a level of dependency around your job at a much more low stakes level than somebody who literally would be homeless and literally has no money to fall back on. Not those level of stakes, but there is a level of stakes tied around your job and employment at any age. That's not just financial, that's also status, that's also a place in society. And that's what I kind of liked about this movie. Seeing someone at Ben Affleck's level go from being the top dog in his field and being a bit of an asshole to getting stuck in a job market with everyone else, and how hard that is. And I think Ben Affleck he's an actor that's okay sometimes and pretty empty other times, but he's an actor that I always give the benefit of the doubt when I see him in a movie. I don't actively hate him or don't act like Jai Courtney or someone like that, where I just see him show up and just know it's going to be bad. With Affleck, you might get a good movie and you might get a decent performance as well. And in this, I think it suited him. I think the character suited him. And for the most part, he does pretty well. And for the most part, I think he's well cast at the level of character we're meant to believe. There's a few scenes with his son that he doesn't pull off as well, maybe, but for the most part, I think he's well cast. And then you find out that the Tommy Lee Jones character, even though he's probably like one of the presidents of the company, you do find out that he built the company from the bottom up, so to speak. I think he was the first employee, and so the fact that it wasn't a silver spoon kind of richness, and the fact that he's struggling with the level the company grew to, and how they used to build things, and how they used to give people a good living through, as he calls it, honest work, which would be traditionally more working class work. The lens he's looking through it, and what the company's become, despite his level of shares and level of wealth. I thought that was a interesting look at the character. And someone with Chris Cooper, who I think brings the most to this movie and brings the most tragedy, when you see him desperately trying to keep his job and really worried about his job and trying to hide out, and the fact that he eventually does lose his job, and seeing what a character who's in his 60s, who's worked in the company for 30 years, who's described when he started as fearless, seeing the amount of fear and the amount of misplaced he is in society. I thought that was brilliant. And Chris Cooper is very good at playing characters who almost hate themselves and who are very stuck in their ways. And to see him when he goes to the employer who's, well, I think she's a job coach, how she coaches him and tells him he has to dye his hair to stop smoking and to basically freshen up. That's a really hard scene. And when he, can't remember the actor's name, I think it's John Dolman, he plays Rawls in The Wire. He has a scene with him as well where he's basically begging for a job, and the John Dolman character, if that is his name, who's old himself, but in a position of power, therefore connected to the world in terms of the status through his job, to see him turn down someone who could very well be a mirror image of himself if he lost his job. And when he says, I wouldn't even recommend this position to someone in their 30s because it's just traveling around the world, it's really hard. That's a hard scene, man. And then this movie actually came across my desk, came across my pass or whatever, because with Kevin Costner's new movie, The Horizons Saga Dawn, or whatever the fuck it's called, they were listing a bunch of the best Kevin Costner performances, and this came up on the list. Now, it's strange that it did come up on the list, because I wouldn't say it's one of his best performances, but I really like the Kevin Costner character. He's, you've heard of Captain America. Kevin Costner is really, in the persona he has at least, he's really Mr. America. Everything that people consider good about America, he always tries to embody in his movies, whether it's open range, a simple grazer farmer, or a futuristic postman in The Postman, or pissing into a cup and drinking in Waterworld. Everything that embodies America. But in this, he's the antithesis, is that the word? To the big corporate company where Ben Affleck comes from. He's still making things. He's still a carpenter. He's taken on a job at a loss just so he can keep his men employed. And I actually really enjoyed the relationship between Ben Affleck's dickhead character and him slowly respecting Kevin Costner and working with Kevin Costner. Again, it's a very quiet movie. It's a very subtle movie. There's no massive scenes there's no big speeches in a soapbox kind of way. It's just a very nice, easy movie to watch and follow characters and sit back. These movies are all, I almost call backseat voyeur movies, because you're just happy to be watching these characters, like you're eavesdropping at a diner and you're hearing a conversation, or you're walking along the street and you're observing these people. Now, this isn't a great movie of that by any means, but it is very easy to watch, and even based on this unflashy style by John Wells, I wouldn't say it compliments his directing, but his directing doesn't draw attention to anything because he doesn't have much talent as a director, in my opinion, and it allows the brilliant performances from some of the actors like Tommy Lee Jones and Chris Cooper to breathe, and Costner does a very good job as well. And Affleck is well cast, if not well acted.
Yeah, just heading out to do some grocery shopping now. Still very much in the first week of new baby's life, so I watched this film at about 4 a.m, dozing off here and there, but then rewinding to recapture what I had missed. Hopefully I caught everything. Feel like I did. Anyway, I'm glad that you explained how this film came across your desk, because when I started watching it, I was like, why in the name of God is Andrew watching a not particularly well-known financial drama from 2010? Obviously, at that point, everyone was going mad about the financial crisis, the recession, everything, all the cutbacks, everything. But at this point, it feels like, why are we still watching this movie? Now, I will say, financial drama is my most hated genre of film. Growing up, it was costume dramas, like a Jane Austen type thing. And I wouldn't say I love those now by any stretch, but I've warmed to them a little more. Financial dramas for me now are the one where I'm like, I can't think of anything less interesting to me as a sort of subject or focus for a movie. And this film hasn't broken that trend. It's a decent film, very televisual. It doesn't surprise me to hear that the director comes from the TV world. It feels like, on a directing level, this film does absolutely nothing that would be out of place in a TV show. It's pretty dull from a filmmaking perspective. Incredibly competent, which is sometimes even worse than, like, it's a bit wild and all over the place. Like, this is just like, yeah, that's how you do everything on time and frame everything correctly. No confusion here. Like, obviously got a great cast. Like you, I love Chris Cooper. And this role, his type of role he'll nail. Sounds like I'm more positive on Affleck than you are. I think he makes a lot of bad movies, like he made those DC movies, which were horrific. And he's got many bad movies. Sorry, it's a bit busy here out in the street. He's got many terrible movies in his catalogue, but he himself, I think, is decent, and I think like a lot of people, you probably associate him with Matt Damon because that's how he first came to encounter Ben Affleck, and for years there was always these like memes about Affleck's the like heartthrob one, and Damon's the one who's actually smart and must have done all of the work writing Good Will Hunting. But over the years, seeing Damon continuously bite off more than he can chew, and I say that as a fan of Matt Damon as well, but like he just really doesn't know his limits at all. And Affleck has generally played within his limits quite smartly. I'm fairly even. I might even have a slight preference for Affleck at this point, though I'm not a diehard fan either. Anyway, this is the type of film that he does well. I love this archetype. I love the Jeremy Maguire character. Basically, all of early Tom Cruise archetype, where he's a dickhead, up his own arse, and then it's humbled, and he eventually kind of finds his way a bit. And also the fact that it's not overdone. Like, it's not like he becomes like the best person in the world. Like, he's just like, he's got like more dignity to him. That always works for me. And you don't see it that much anymore. I think it's like one of the best archetypes to put an A-lister leading man in. So I wish that we saw it more often. That's when this film is at its best for me, is when it goes a little bit Frank Capra, a little bit Hollywood. Kevin Costner's character is the prime example of that, like someone who's just sort of like a bright spot in the world, doing good. You know, it's cheesy. If you wanted to make the more cutting Ken Loach version of this, then you might, although Ken Loach always has those kind of savior characters actually saying that. So yeah, even Loach recognizes the potency of that Hollywoodizing. I have the similar difficulty connecting with or sympathizing with people who are like, you know, losing the kind of lives that we see in this movie. And like you said, it takes a little bit of an adjustment to go, well, look, you know, these are human beings, and this would be really difficult, and this would be incredibly challenging. So just because, you know, I'm maybe critical of the system that kind of had them there in the first place, and I'm maybe dismissive of how important it is to be there. Wherever you are, whatever your station is in life, it is pretty traumatic having that just ripped away from you overnight. And yeah, this movie is sort of like a frank look at that. Saying that, it does take me a good while to warm up to it. I don't know, I didn't think this movie was great. And oh, sorry, just knocked my daughter. Just rammed my daughter's leg into the license plate of a parked car while I was going along there. So she's in pieces, aren't you? But yeah, I'll pick this up. I'll send in the rest of my thoughts later. I've got to go get her some ice cream or something to get her back on side. Back home now, just making some dinner, trying to squeeze it in before the football. Yeah, I've completely lost my train of thought as to what I was on about back there. But yeah, wasn't overly keen on the movie. I think, like I said earlier, it's like when it's being a bit more cheesy and it's being a bit more kind of Hollywood, like feel good things, then I like it more. But that also feels like it's not really that kind of movie. And what's the point? That, like, I don't know, I can't get into this genre, like this kind of Adam McKay type movie. I don't care. I'm not interested. Always find that these films are, at least to some extent, even if they're complete satires, and even if they sort of promote themselves as being like anti-capitalist films that are about like how, you know, the knife edge that we built and how awful it is. So often, and this is not the worst example of it, but they so often just seem to fetishize capitalism so much that it just doesn't really work for me. But I like Ben Affleck. I thought he was decent. I liked that they well, obviously they don't show people at every class level because they don't show working class people and stuff, but there are many movies that handle that side of things. But within the kind of executive level, they do have like several different strata in the film, which is kind of interesting. Like, yeah, this could affect Tommy Lee Jones and Ben Affleck. It would be very different what the impact was for that person, but it could affect both of them. So, yeah, and yeah, it's got enough strands that I was like, by the end of the movie, like that girl who's in Your Sister's Sister and Rachel Getting Married, she's the titular Rachel of Rachel Getting Married. I always forget her name, but she plays Affleck's wife in it. She's good. Like there's a lot of people like that where I'm like, yeah, you kind of nailed that character in that performance. I don't know how much depth there is to that character, how much I'm interested in watching a movie about that character, but yeah, does a good job. Okay, you can have an ice cream. All right, so that's the hit resolution to that strand as well. I'm just giving her an ice cream. She just finished her dinner. Okay, well, I'm going to watch this football. Let me know if you have any more thoughts on it. Yeah, wasn't really my cup of tea per se.
Yeah, it seems you very much resolved the buggy fiasco with an ice cream, which is always good. And just like Affleck at the end of this movie, you've stepped away from not that talking to me is work, but stepped away from the distractions to concentrate on your family life. So all is well. But yeah, to be clear, financial movies are one of my least favorite movies as well. I enjoyed this movie enough while I was watching it. It's fine. I won't remember much about it in a few weeks. For the record, I actually prefer Affleck as a presence over Matt Damon these days. Matt Damon is quite a boring screen presence for the most part for me. But the point I was making about Affleck was when he sticks to his comfort zone, I like him. And then when he goes over his comfort zone, maybe in a few scenes here and there, that's when I have a problem with it. But yeah, you just never know what comes across your desk in this crazy world, you know. Well, it could be a financial disaster, how it affects execs in 2010, or it could be a movie about hundreds of beavers. So yeah, not really much more can be said about this. As far as the football, well, England are through to the final. There's a lot of police outside and a lot of people chanting "We're coming home." So on that note, I don't know which is worse, the financial fucking crash of 2008 or the crash that's gonna happen someday if England win this.
Your mailbox is full. Please delete new or stored messages which you no longer need so that new messages may be received.